Why would Michael Massey do this?
Oh, man.
Oh, and Josef Newgarden won the Indy 500. Holy shit! Well, welcome back to Motorsport 101. Does anybody still have ears left after that one amongst the room? King, why are you bleeding from the neck? Welcome to episode 443 of Motorsport 101. And this is a special edition of the show. It is part one of our Day of Classics doubleheader, I guess you could say. Sadly, we weren't able to do a live show because amazingly, the three people in this room recording this episode right now, checks notes, are all professional journalists now. It's quite the vibe, but here we are. So while my ears recover slowly, let's introduce, of course, you probably already could tell from the intro, he's back. The core three has returned for a special occasion. It's Erik King, Mr. Jalopnik writer himself. Hello, King. How's it going? Good to have you back.
Hello. Someone call an ambulance, but not from me.
I think we still have to peel a certain co-host off the ceiling.
For the first time ever.
We have slain the dragon!
Yeah, for the first time ever, with no irony, we can honestly say, hey, Joe, we did it.
That, of course, is Cam Buckley. Hi, Cam. How's it going? I'm joking. It's RJ O'Connell. Hello, RJ.
Happy birthday, Cam Buckley. Finally. I'll expand on this later, but I feel so good about the winner of this race. What a moment. What a crowning achievement. Now let's think about the steps that got us to this point. This is awesome, baby.
King, it's going to be a long hour. It's like when you're babysitting a 4-year-old and you accidentally gave them all the sherbets. It's not going to end well. Oh boy, but yes, we're going to get through the 107th running of the Indianapolis 500, and as you could probably tell by now, a certain someone from Tennessee may have won, which has led to another person from Tennessee going slightly insane. And that's RJ O'Connell, because Josef Newgarden won the Indy 500, or really, should that be the Indy 2.5? Yeah, it's kind of weird how we got to this point. Shall we say the Indy 500 was decided on lap 200, literally, in very direct fashion, and not just because it had a last lap overtake in it. We'll get into that as well. We'll get into Pato O'Ward, who may have just thrown away an even bigger chance of winning the Indy 500 compared to what he had last year, which is kind of saying something, given that he very nearly won this race last year and probably should have won this year's. Because that is a lot to break down. And of course, we'll get into some of the other minor stories involved as well, like Santino Ferrucci finishing third for AJ Foyt, and a collective sigh of relief on that final caution. We'll explain why in a minute as well. Tony Kanaan's final 500, how Alex Palou, who was looking very good about 50 or 60 laps in, all of a sudden wasn't, at the hands of Rinus VeeKay, who can for some reason never quite get a clean 500 in somehow. Scott Dixon with the vibration from hell. And yeah, goodness knows what else over the next hour or so on Motorsport 101. Places you can find us real quick. You can follow us on Twitter at Dre_WTF1, at RJ O'Connell. Tell him we said hi. And maybe you can get him off the ceiling. And of course, you could follow Erik King on Jalopnik, of course, and on Twitter at Erik King. And also remind me the username for your other highlights channel, King, that you now post cool clips from?
Of course I do, but I only use it. I'm gonna be 100% real with you guys. I only use it as a burner account to shield my normal account from any copyright claims.
Oh no, we gave away the secret. We're giving away burner accounts. Isn't this like a current NBA controversy at the moment?
Hey, I'm
It
not
is.
in the NBA. I'm good.
Kevin Durant, is that you? Maybe not, but yep, you can follow us all there on our Twitter accounts. Of course, you can follow the podcast as well at motorsport_101. We are still taking down our Kyle Kirkwood wallpaper off the walls. It's very tragic. But you can follow us on the website, motorsport101.com. If you want some bonus thoughts from yours truly on the 500, there's a whole heap of them on there. Thanks to everybody who read that last night when I put it up. Surprisingly large response given it was 2 a.m. UK time. And also, shout out to all the people that love Santino Ferrucci who gave me shit in my mentions. I appreciate all of you, especially you. You're great. And if you really like us, you can back us financially on Patreon, patreon.com/motorsport101. $5 gets you early access to all of our episodes. 10 gets you into the supporters club of our Discord server. You can listen to these episodes live as they're being recorded. Shout out to Jason and Vanessa who are in there right now listening in. Much appreciated. Hopefully we can find Jason some new ears. We appreciate you, buddy. Hang in there. It could be a long one. But without further ado, let's get into the 107th Indianapolis 500. It was Josef Newgarden that took an erratic final lap, one-lap shootout over Marcus Ericsson. Yes, he was back up the front again to win the 107th running of the Indy 500 by just 0.097 seconds. It was Penske's 19th, count them, 19th Indy 500 victory. And for Josef, it was the second longest anyone has ever had to wait before finally claiming a spot on the famous Borg-Warner trophy, his 12th attempt. Same as Tony Kanaan, who was also in his final 500, which I think that's quite fitting. Only Sam Hanks is the only person who's ever taken longer than the 12 attempts that Josef did to win before winning the 500. He was 13 for those keeping counts. So while we scrape RJ off the ceiling, King, what does this mean for Josef's legacy?
Oh man, it's complicated. It's I'd say of all the drivers post-unification who made their debut post-unification in 2008, he's probably, that put him up there. He's probably the best one.
He's right up there. I think this is my seventh or eighth full season watching IndyCar. And if you take out the guys that, again, like you said, were pre-split or were pre-unification, like Dixon, for example, or Will Power. Yes! Yeah, it probably is Josef Newgarden. RJ, calm down. Okay, get it out of your system. Talk about your mans.
The demon has been slayed. Penske can win at the Indianapolis 500. The means of how we got there, bit strange, but the ends. What else is there to say? We were from the perspective of a fan. Like, I remember, I came back into watching IndyCar at a very tough time in my life. It was Josef Newgarden's second year. He had a tough rookie season, but as he started to gain more experience, he started to get better and better results. When he started at Sarah Fisher Hartman Racing, which became CFH Racing in the merger with what is now Ed Carpenter Racing. I remember the first IndyCar race I went to, 2015, Barber Motorsports Park. Josef Newgarden led the most laps on the day in a strategic battle between himself and Graham Rahal. It was Newgarden who got the first win, and I can remember telling my dad how awesome this was. He'd never heard of this guy, but I knew this guy's stock was rising. And I decided, because I know that guys like Juan Pablo Montoya were not going to be around forever. I need to find somebody to hang my hat on this, because as much as I am a journalist, I'm also a fan of motorsport, and Josef Newgarden's driving that day was spectacular, and it only continued from there. One of the ones that stick with me was the 2016 Iowa race, where coming off a broken collarbone at Texas Motor Speedway, he obliterated the field. He was doing everything. He was coming about as close to competing for titles as you could for what was kind of a limited team. They were capable of winning up races on their day, but never really championship contenders. Somehow, Josef Newgarden got them up in the top 5 in the championships, and then you wonder, what could this young man do in an elite organization? And then Roger Penske comes calling. He wins his 3rd race on the trot. He wins the championship in his first year, and surely you think the Indianapolis 500 wins are going to come rolling in by the dozen. Except they don't. Team Penske struggles at the Indianapolis 500. It looks like it was going to be another anonymous day at the 500. The qualifying speeds were not there, but the race pace in practice, I was keeping an eye on that. And the Penskes did seem to be very, very well. That made me think, okay, yes, Josef Newgarden's going to be starting mid-pack, but if he can pick his way through the field, if his crew can give him the right pit stops, he's not out of it just yet. And that's exactly what happened early on. He gains ground. His team gives him all the right pit stops. By the quarter distance mark of the race, he's worked his way up into the top 10. And by about the halfway point, he's worked his way into the top 5. And you think, depending on how this race shakes out, this young man is going to be a factor for the win. In a race where, up until this year, he only finished as high as 3rd. My goodness. It does suck, and I'll get into it more in our next segment, because the string of stoppages really put a damper on what was building to be a very fascinating race of strategy, particularly after Romain Grosjean crashed, where you had some leaders staying out on the pit stop and some leaders coming in to top off the tank. Everybody was going to have to make one more pit stop either way, but that battle of strategy was going to be fascinating. It's a shame we didn't have that, but these were the hands that every driver was dealt, and Josef Newgarden was in position to have a chance to prevail in this last lap shootout. And Marcus Ericsson, first of all, tremendous Indy 500 champion over the past few years. Make no mistake, he's not a surprise. He's not sneaky. He's as subtle as a brick to the face. He is a very, very good, I would almost say elite IndyCar driver at this stage. And he did everything that he could to win that race on a 1-lap sprint. He got the perfect restart. He got it right going into 1 and 2, but Josef Newgarden got an even better run out of 2, made the move down the backstretch, and then it was smooth sailing from there. And oh my goodness, Josef Newgarden, in his 12th try, wins the Indianapolis 500. After 12 years of effort, Josef Newgarden of Hendersonville, Tennessee, has won it. And he jumps through he gets out of his car, and then he spots a hole in the catch fence along the start-finish stride. Photographers use this to take pictures of the cars coming across the yard of bricks. And what does Josef Newgarden decide to do? To make this all the more iconic, he slinks on through it and runs right into the crowd of over 300,000 spectators so he can feel the energy and feel the love. And every person on his crew comes with him. They climb the other side of the fence along with it. My goodness, that's special. His legacy is complete. It was already stellar with 26 wins going into this race. 2 series championships. As King mentioned, of every driver who broke into the sport after the 2008 unification, he has had one of the most star-studded careers. In an alternate universe, maybe he is America's next hope in Formula One, because let's not forget, for a brief period of time, he was racing in Europe. Got as high as the GP3 series, but his career took him back to his home country in America. Indy Lights champion, early season struggles, victories, championships, and now blessed with the opportunity that so many great drivers had tried for years and years and years. I think of guys like Michael Andretti and Sebastian Bourdais, two of the all-time greatest decorated champions who won every single race that the sport had, except the Indianapolis 500. And Josef Newgarden, in his 12th try, he did it. He closed the deal on a sensational win. My goodness. I was so happy about it. Oh, I can't believe it.
Well, what gave it away, really? I mean, any subtle indicators there, King? I mean, anything you picked up on there in all of that? No?
No, RJ covered all the bases. But I'd say going forward, this is one of those, I wouldn't say, it's weird to say breakthrough wins, but it's breakthrough in the sense that Josef Newgarden at this point of his career is going from being the best of nearly everyone else to being in that era where it's going to be expected for him to get those wins and championships, to start challenging the top of all the all-time, best wins in terms of, championships wins, Indy 500 wins. It feels a little weird, gonna be honest.
It does. It's like opening Pandora's box in the sense of, like, I've joked with RJ on this show many times over the years that it was getting to the point where Newgarden was becoming one of the great IndyCar drivers that never won this race, in kind of like a reverse of Helio Castroneves being quite possibly the greatest IndyCar driver to never win the national title, the Astor Cup. It was starting to look that way, and as we've alluded to, it was his 12th attempt. That's when you start asking serious questions, and especially when you combine it with Penske not being particularly great at the 500 post-pandemic. They did win with Pagenaud in 2019, but that seems like a bit of an outlier. Beyond that now, since then, they've largely struggled. They were caught up in a bump day scare a couple of times, and the other Penske's in this race, Will Power, was struggling with a broken weight jacker all race long and then crashed out at the end, and McLaughlin was demoted to the back of the field after collecting, ironically, former Penske driver Simon Pagenaud in what was a very silly bit of driving. But Josh, we are now going to have to start evaluating Newgarden on an all-timer scale. Just like 27 career wins. I actually forgot he had as many as 27 when I was writing about it last night, that he's got as many as that. And half of them are on ovals too. Like, I think this was his 13th win on an oval.
For a road course trained driver.
Yeah, 13 oval wins, I want to say. Crazy. It's having a 50% of your wins being ovals is nuts. And yeah, he's up there with the very best oval racers in the series and has been for quite some time. I put the bracket between him and probably Pato O'Ward, and that's maybe it for the really stupid, good, consistent oval runners in recent years. I mean, for me personally, I remember making videos talking about how much of a superstar Josef Newgarden was when he did win that first title. The first year he joined a Penske team that had Helio, Pagenaud, and Power in it, and a murderer's row of talent. I mean, as of the time of this recording, you're talking 6 500 wins, all of them having won an Indy 500 each at least, and then 3 Astor Cups of their own between them. As mentioned, Helio probably the best to never win one. And I said back then that the series should go all in on him. This is your dude. Like, not only was he a stupidly talented driver, but also never took himself too seriously, handsome as all hell, a genuine beefcake, a stand-up guy for the most part, and an excellent ambassador for the series at large. And it never quite materialized, and like, it never quite played out that way. Even when Alex Rossi came up to challenge him, when he had those pair of really good seasons in Andretti, and Rossi was a genuine, like, three-tool, all-round threat to win everything. And not just the 500, to add the 500 he'd already won, given he won it as a rookie 7 years ago now. God, that was 7 years ago. That feels like it was yesterday. But it's never quite worked out, and I think that chapter of the sport's kind of moved on a little bit because now we're flooded full of younger talent. The revolution is here, and now Newgarden gets his moment in the sun after winning 2 Astor Cups and being the consistent title threat, the staple piece of the sport's arguably best team, and now he gets his moment. But I'm just glad he got it because Joseph is a phenomenal, very special racing driver, and yeah, he deserved this one. He really did, and my God, did he have to earn it? Because King, have you ever seen anybody final weave like that on the final stretch where he's almost in pit road defending Marcus Ericsson at the end?
Well, you had to do what you had to do. It was one lap for it all, and I was in the one time only. I was in the unfortunate situation on iRacing of being in a race at Indianapolis and AI race control saying, "Hey, we're gonna have a restart on the last lap." I was able to defend my position. That's only because I didn't have Josef Newgarden behind me. But pretty much when you're in a situation where you're going down either the front or back straight, you have to do whatever you must to keep the guy behind you.
And it probably worked out for the best, given it was less than 1/10 of a second over the line. One of the closer 500 finishes.
The fourth closest finish in the history of the Indianapolis 500.
Wow.
And I'm gonna be real. The last quarter of that 500 felt like the last quarter of a basketball game. It was 50 laps on paper, but it felt way longer than that.
Yeah,
my goodness.
It all I think RJ hit the nail on the head earlier. Grosjean's caution at lap 149, which is a very convenient number. That it was 150 laps in, because we all know the gloves come off in the final quarter, and it actually beautifully poised that race for the last 50 laps, where, as you mentioned, split strategies on fuel, the drama of how long could people like Takuma Sato and Pato O'Ward, who were off sequence, could go. More on him later. And seeing how that played out, we even thought for a split second that, hey, if there's enough caution, maybe Ryan Hunter-Reay could steal one for Drea Reinebold, which would have been a hell of a thought with Augustine Canapino in the Jinkos car, second and third at one point. And shout out to Canham, great 12th place, by the way.
The way I like to frame the last quarter, that's like the last opportunity where everyone seemingly has a chance to win. And as the laps ticks down, you need to be further and further to the front to realistically have a chance.
And Josef Newgarden brought it up in his post-race press conference. I am glad that IndyCar is having these extra aerodynamic options to help people make moves. But the prevailing theory that was expressed all the way from the start of practice by drivers like Dixon and Pato to Josef Newgarden, even in victory, saying, yes, you are able to make moves and get up there at the front, but if you're in a train of cars and you're 3, 4, 5 back, it's tough to make moves still, because these cars, they race well, but at a track, they are still very aero dependent. And that means turbulent wake, and that means if you're stuck further back in the queue, especially early on, all you can do is save fuel. I mean, my goodness, the tandems that we had early in the race, Palou and VK hooking up and swapping the lead with each other in a coordinated dance, and then it became Rosenquist and O'Ward. Oh goodness, what could have been?
Yeah, because when it comes the early person of the race with the McLarens, I when we were watching the race together, I talked about the McLarens looming, and it really felt like they were there all day. And, we were talking about the tandem, but also I like to call it tandem and tow, because the front two people tandem, third person pretty much gets towed along for literally all the benefit and no pain. And Rosenquist found himself in that third spot most of the day, and it felt like he was going to be in a serious position to contend for this win, and then his day ended.
Oh boy. Should we talk about how that race finished?
Yeah, now that we've gotten to the ends, and God, what a wonderful end! What a wonderful victory! Now that we've gotten to the end, let's talk about the mains. This finish of this race was marred with controversy, with 3 red flags in the final 15 laps. First, Felix Rosenquist washes out, hits the wall at turn 1, his car spins out, and Kyle Kirkwood has nowhere to go but to clip him. It flips him upside down and launches one of his tires over past a grandstand full of people, thankfully only striking an unoccupied car, whose owner, by the way, was invited to kiss the bricks and give it a ride back as to pay it back. So that brought out our first.
That car is totaled.
Yeah.
But thankfully, everyone walked away from that.
Yeah.
The second one we got on the restart with 8 laps to go was Pato O'Ward trying to make a move back on Marcus Ericsson. That leads to a crash, and then we get our second red flag. And then, as we were getting ready to restart with 4 laps to go, we're thinking, this is going to be what settles it. We have a pileup in the back of the field before we even get to the start-finish line, where Benjamin Peterson and Ed Carpenter's cars get junked, Grant Brayhall's car gets junked, Marco Andretti's involved in it. And then they throw the red flag, and we have, for the first time since 1997, a 1-lap shootout to decide the Indianapolis 500. And this is in the rule book. This is within race director Kyle Novak's right to where they could go 1 to green immediately after leaving pit lane. So they had 1 formation lap and then 1 race lap to decide it. Many were quick to make the comparisons to Formula One's infamous 2021 finale at Yas Marina Circuit in Abu Dhabi. And runner-up Marcus Ericsson got out of his car and was upset at the finish, saying, "I just thought it was unfair and a dangerous end to the race. I don't think there was enough laps to do what we did." I think I know what our answer is going to be this one, but I want to propose the question anyway. Was this finish the right call from IndyCar?
It was legal, but it was legal in the same way that Abu Dhabi 21 was legal. In terms of, like, yes, it was legal, but they probably shouldn't have done it, and it was not how they normally operate.
Yeah, like yes, technically speaking, and I know a lot of IndyCar fans are very quick to make this point that yes, this is officially in IndyCar's rule, but at race director's discretion, they can go straight out of the pit lane with a 1 to green warning. They can do that. It is in the rule book, and no rule was broken for us to get to this point, Michael. However, to borrow Jeff Goldblum from Jurassic Park 2, it's not a matter of whether you can do it. It's a matter of whether you should do it, in my opinion. And
I should just point out, just quickly, so IndyCar does publicly, they do publish their rule book online.
It is, yeah.
It is combined sporting technical regulation. All in all, the entire rule book's only 101 pages.
Good number.
And it is pretty much across most of the rule book is ... at the race director's discretion,
which we all know can lead to various events. Look, it's in the book, so I can't really complain too much about this. However, I will try, because anyone who is a regular IndyCar viewer knows that is not how IndyCar normally restarts a race. It is normally out of the pit lane, you take a lap as a warm-up lap, then you get the 1 to green, and then you go. It takes 2 laps to restart a race, normally. And look, IndyCar, throwing a red flag late on to try and guarantee a green flag finish is nothing new. I've seen it many, many times over the years. This is how IndyCar tends to officiate their races. I have
First. I mentioned the 1997 finished. That one was handled so poorly that it led to the United States Automobile Club being permanently removed from sanctioning this series in favor of in-house officiating.
Yeah.
So it could have been worse.
Oh, good. Good to know. For me, given how we know, generally speaking, how Indy 500's finish, I am not a fan of a one-lap shootout, especially when you've taken the lap away to warm up your tires. That was asking for trouble, and thank goodness everybody got to the line clean on that final lap, despite Santino Ferrucci's best efforts.
Crazy enough, the one of these restarts that carried the most risk came away with the least punishing consequences.
Amazingly. And I don't like the fact that they threw caution to the wind, literally, in this case, and decided to have a one-lap restart on a 225-mile-an-hour oval with a lack of... with cold tires, when you know drivers are going to go, to the limit and beyond to try and win, because of course they are. They're racing drivers, no shit. I have one sincere question, gentlemen, and feel free to answer this however you choose. Why is ending a race under yellow the new boogeyman?
I think because
it's been a thing the last couple Indianapolis 500s where they've did everything they can to ensure a finish. Part of me wants to believe that it's due to what happened during the early 2010s when Indy had a lot of rain short races, like one or two races that did end under yellow, and they don't want to be in a situation where they don't have a quote unquote exciting finish for the fans.
And that's something also, it's especially prevalent in American motorsport too. Like I mentioned this in an earlier episode, like the reason why NASCAR has what we now call overtime is because of the fans felt robbed of so many competitive finishes, and also so many opportunities for Dale Jr. to win races at the height of the sport's mainstream popularity. So they decided, you know what, we're going to take this rule that we have at a truck series, and we're going to do one attempt to send the race to guarantee competitive finish. And then that evolved into multiple attempts, and then evolved to, we're going to try this as long as we can until we get a competitive finishes, either the white or either the checker or the yellow ends it.
Yeah. Ugh, I just...
And
okay.
It wasn't just the finish for me. There were a lot of other moments where race control had a very light hand to avoid influencing the finish. Like when Ferrucci's crew had a tire briefly leave the pit box and the team was only fined. Or during one of the restarts, I forget which driver it was. We had a 3 wide before the line, and someone overtook another driver on the inside, which is illegal in the rule book, but was only given a warning.
I want to say it was Renus VK.
Yeah, I think it might have been a VK. I'd have to watch it back.
I could check the bot score on that. But, and, hey, it's come to Formula One. Like, this is a symptom of, like, a bigger thing going on where race directors feel compelled to like have the entertainment factor steer the direction and how these races are conducted. But it's strange because IndyCar was fine with letting the Texas race end under caution. We were generally fine with that.
maybe because the race was so good beforehand, we were probably just overly satisfied by the time it was actually over, even if we didn't get a crescendo finish.
I think it was because it was Indianapolis.
Yeah, the stakes are so much bigger. We all know how this series gets down. I mean, I'd mentioned this during Australia in F1, where that was the first F1 race ever, for those of you who maybe missed that episode or maybe just missed the race in general. That was the first F1 race ever to have 3 red flags in it. And it was also just the 11th race to ever finish at F1 under yellow, which...
we've had over 1,000 of them.
Yeah, and we've had over 550 since the safety car was first brought in. I want to say in 1993. So since the safety car's inclusion, we've had 11 Grand Prix finish under yellow, which has always led me to the point of chasing the entertainment bag. It's like you're solving a problem that doesn't really exist. It's like, like F1, we've got to have these green flag finishes. Well, no, we don't. They like an F1 race finishing under yellow is literally 1 in 50 odds. It's just been incredibly freakish that we've had 2 in the last year or so. It's crazy. And look, I don't want to get into IndyCar fan base jabbing too hard here, because I've done that a few times on this podcast, and it gets
grating. Like, there are some culture wars that are worth fighting, but the F1 versus IndyCar culture war is just something that I'm already over.
It's exhausting, but I have to make this point. If you're going to copy Formula One's homework, this is not the page you want to tear out of their book. Trust me on this.
I think, I hate to use another, NASCAR Brian France term, but it feels like, in general, at large, because there have been a lot of statistics about why, say, the rising popularity of the NBA, and that people aren't watching games, they're mainly watching clips on YouTube, and this obsession with having quote unquote Game 7 moments. And it makes it puts the impression in people's heads that, we could have a fantastic race, but if it ends under yellow, it negates everything because we don't have that clip to put up on social media. It might not be a direct A to B, but that line of thinking gets you there.
Yeah, look back at, if you go back and look at Indy 500 finishes under yellow. 2020, what was the headline? Indy 500 finishes under yellow flag, Twitter isn't happy. Look at the headline from 2012 when Takuma Sato spun himself out and Dario Franchitti won under yellow, saying Dario Franchitti's win is tainted. I'd imagine they didn't say the same for Tony Kanaan, who, bless him, did win the race under yellow, and what a moment that was. But yeah, for all the finger wagging that we're doing, the general populace wants to see a competitive finish to these races. And we're just like, okay, I think we've opened Pandora's box a little too much.
Yeah, because I understand if the frustration that would have happened, because normally the Sato Dario finish, that was, albeit they didn't make it to the line, that was an exciting finish. But I think the idea of the race ending due to a restart crash was too much to swallow.
That's fair. Oh gosh, it's just my general vibe on this is that finish felt too much. I felt like in an already very dangerous race, I think you're drifting over that line of acceptable towards unacceptable risk by having a 1-lap finish on cold tires to an incredibly dangerous race on paper as is, that had already had 3 red flags already. And yeah, like I said, I think in North America, I think we're a little bit more conditioned to the green, white checker style finish, and maybe that's
which is strange because IndyCar technically doesn't even have that in the books. Please do not get any ideas.
No, but
what happened yesterday fell in that gray area where it makes people want to include one because it would have allowed the laps to be prepared. But I'm in the mindset of, if IndyCar are going to keep doing this, you have to have a hard cutoff point where a red flag will end the race. Like, just straight up. I would say there needs to be enough laps for the drivers to be, the drivers to make sure their cars are ready to go. And personally, I'd like to see there be at least 2 guaranteed green flag laps.
I agree.
Just so the leader at the restart has the chance to respond.
Yeah, a chance of the. Let's be honest here. As much as Newgarden won this race and he absolutely deserved it, Marcus Ericsson was a lamb to slaughter as a result of that one lap restart and the fact that, yes, because of the previous red flag we'd had, by a nose, Ericsson was given the lead in a red flag that we thought was going to end the race. Because we did the maths and we realized with 2 to go, we thought, well, this is over, right? They're just going to. You need 2 laps to restart a race. They're just going to lead Marcus out for a procession, and he'll get his photograph and win, right? And then we found out about that rule. Which let's remind everybody here: IndyCar does not use this rule very often, if at all, ever.
Yeah, that's part of the messiness of that 1997 finish, because nobody was prepared for USAC to decide to throw the green flag heading to the white flag on the final lap of the race. You could hear it in the voice of Ari Lyondike Jr.'s dad when he's radioing to his team, "What the fuck is going on?"
Yeah.
As he streaks to a second Indianapolis 500 victory.
Yeah, because at least 97 had the unawareness that okay, we're going, but no, it wasn't what we saw yesterday, where we got real lucky because we saw some really aggressive defending from both Ericsson and Newgarden on that last lap, where Ericsson, pretty much takes Newgarden. I think both of them end up in the paved asphalt. I mean, the paved runoff in the exit of 2. And then in the exit of 4, they fully go down the pit entry.
Yeah. And they let it stand last year because that's what Ericsson had to do to keep Pato O'Ward behind him and slammed the door shut on him. That's what Newgarden did to keep Ericsson at bay after he made the pass. And Newgarden said as much. He knew that race control was not going to penalize that.
And I think that's the core of the problem. You talked about the illegal pass in the restart, the loose equipment. If race control are just literally not going to enforce the rules that are in the rule book, then what's the point?
Yeah, it's honestly, shout out to this man who, I don't know how he got through this broadcast with all his hair still in his head, but James Hinchcliffe was the only broadcaster besides Diffie that called a brilliant 500, because he had to put up with Townsend Bell's nonsense regarding this all broadcast long. And I think James was going to explode by the time the Ferrucci tire incident had come loose, where it blatantly goes beyond the line, and Townsend's like, I don't know about it. It blatantly does.
For reveal when they cut to the replay.
Dude, as much shit as you and birthday boy Buckley were giving James Hinchcliffe after Mid-Ohio and Texas, this is nothing compared to this is
blatant.
Townsend, my dude, what? I know you represent this. I know you're his agent, but this is a serious conflict of interest. This is worse than Hinchcliffe stumping for his buddy.
Yeah, I did not know that Townsend's his agent. That's news to me, but that explains a lot.
Townsend Bell literally has a financial stake in the marketability of Santino Ferrucci.
Well, more on that very soon, because it's in my notes. But my general to put a neat bow on this: bad optics for a series that is determined to get away from F1, but was absolutely influenced by recent F1 to do what it did to get that finish. And I do not like how flexible race direction are with IndyCar's rulebook. I'm not a fan of it, and it will lead to precedents being taken away, lines getting blurry, and then as a fan, it's hard to decide what's a penalty and what isn't. Because hey, I've not mentioned that in any other series I've covered lately. No.
Oh man, but yeah, it's like, I said it before. Like I said it on Twitter, it was an extremely thrilling finish, but I don't want to see it again.
Yeah,
and Josef Newgarden drove a tremendous race, and unlike other people on Twitter about a certain other incident, I don't want to see him get
Yeah, for all you wannabe Aisha Currys out there, and I know that there are worse people to aspire to, but he won it about as fair and square as you can offer. And sure, yes, I know even jokingly people like to point the fact, oh, Roger Penske now owns the Speedway. Surely he's going to tilt the table in favor of his driver to win this race. And how do you explain the last 3 years?
Also, like, how? Is he just going over to race control, just banging on the door like, hey, Kyle, can you throw me a red real quick? Like, how does that work?
Oh, God help us. Right.
Like, yeah, you may be sick of Penske winning, but come on, you're probably litigating in the favor of a Ganassi driver. You're litigating for Pepsi to go kick Coke's ass.
But so just one random note. The weird thing is, on my live tweeting channel, the people who are most aggrieved by the finish are mainly Pato Award fans, which is weird.
Isn't that a beautiful segue? It's a beautiful segue. One of those earlier red flags that RJ mentioned earlier was championship contender. I think he was second going into this race. Pato Award driving into the back of Marcus Ericsson with 7 laps left, ending his race as he clattered into the wall. Afterwards, when he was being interviewed, once he got out of the medical center, luckily both Ericsson made a tremendous save to keep it out of the wall, by the way, and Pato was fine, thankfully. Accused Marcus of closing the door on him and said in future he needs to be, quote, more aggressive going forward. Is Pato Award's attitude becoming an issue?
And just to make a quick correction, he didn't go into the back of Award. They were going in the 3. He went to the inside, classic Andretti line where you're really below the painted white line, and they made contact.
Yeah, I think it was Ericsson that got past him going over the start-finish line of the restart, and Pato's determined to get back past him into 3, but he takes way too shallow a line. Ericsson can hang on to it into 3, but Award just can't, and it triggers this really strange chain reaction of events where he crashes, and then Agustin Canapino's damaged car rolls and bonks right into him because he had spun and crashed on his own. And as the field checks up to avoid Canapino, Simon Pagenaud gets dumped by Scott McLaughlin, and Pagenaud gets into the wall. It's a strange thing.
Yeah.
Very, very weird incident. And it's weird talking about Pato Award in a strange way, because the way the man has evolved as a driver has been fascinating, especially in the last 12 months, where he's gone from uber likable, plucky McLaren guy who was, punching above his weight in a McLaren side that wasn't all that great, very inconsistent, to McLaren now being arguably the second best team in the series right now. And they're amassing a fucking fleet. And when I say fleet, I mean this is going to be the Death Star potentially next year. It's the worst kept secret in the series that Alex Palou is joining them next year. They still might keep Felix Rosenquist depending on results. They've got options, like Zach is openly flirting with 4 cars going forward, and now it was announced today that they are moving into Andretti's old building, so they're going to have a new 59,000 square foot facility in 2025.
Just strange, because weren't they building their own facility, or was I confusing them with somebody else?
You were confusing that with someone else, because the team at the back, Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan, opened a new facility this year.
That makes sense. So, yeah, I'm sure Andretti's building something for their F1 team in Indianapolis, but I just assume that any new building is just more unaffordable housing these days. That's just the nature of being from London. I digress. Pato has become plucky underdog who can win the odd race to genuine title contender and now possibly the most popular driver in the whole series.
Yeah.
It is incredible how fast Pato has gathered these fans, especially from Mexico, especially from fans around the border. A lot of people of Mexican heritage, and also much and all of that. So there's a lot going on there. In how he's been able to gain an audience very, very quickly.
He's the Eddie Guerrero of he is prime. He is the closest thing we have to prime Eddie Guerrero, and Pato races with a chip on his shoulder, and that's become a lot more prevalent. If you know the kind of shit that he's had that was thrown his way before he got to this point, because let's not forget, before he was the piece of the McLaren Indy team, he was kind of led along a string at the Red Bull Junior team. And then before that, he was trying to pick up the pieces after a deal to race with Harding Racing, now with Andretti Steinbrenner Racing, I guess. But that whole deal fell through just after he'd won the Indy Lights title. And before then, he was struggling just to get the budget to get rides, even though he was one of the most talented dudes around. And last year, we were talking about the finish between him and Ericsson. Pato said after the race that he didn't have the horsepower to make the move and make it stick. I think the consensus was from all of us was that he just made a business decision. And Pato said this year, he's going to change his approach. And he overcorrected because with time to spare, with fresher tires, with less fuel, with more fuel in the tank, and this despite the fact that they were having trouble refilling the car on all their pit stops, Pato overcorrected. He made a business decision in the opposite direction. And now the business has fallen apart. And my goodness, McLaren had a gourmet meal presented to them, and they just dropped it on the floor between Rosenqvist crashing, Alexander Rossi finishing fifth. That was fine, but they could have conceivably won this race 1-2-3.
Yeah, McLaren again had. McLaren had an incredible set of drivers going into Tony Kanaan was your floor here. We make no bones about it. Me and RJ both picked Pato O'Ward to win this race back in March. On the day, I'm not going to lie, on the day, I had a gut feeling about Felix Rosenqvist because Felix had been so consistently fast, all week long. All 2 weeks long, I should say, really. And Felix was right in contention all the way until he checked up and crashed. Pato, I completely agree with RJ. He's gone too far the other way. He's gone from too conservative to. I suspect the chip on his shoulder got even bigger after what happened at Long Beach.
Oh yeah,
what happened at Long Beach, where he sent it on Scott Dixon. I still think Pato has to shoulder the majority of the blame. I think he went way over the curb to make that move stick. Dixon's already committed to the corner. He's already at the apex by the time they make contact. Pato knew exactly what he was doing. And if anyone's seen 100 Days to Indy where they talk about that incident, Dixon was pissed when he bumped into Pato again after that one. And Pato didn't back down. Pato refused to apologize for that. He said it was just good, hard racing, essentially. And he said, I'm going to be. And
he knows as well, going back to the point about, race control being more hands off, that's also a symptom of race control being hands off. And I don't want these drivers race with kid gloves on, but this is also part of it.
This was too much. Like I still maintain Pato should have been penalised for Dixon's incident. He wasn't, and he wasn't when he went over the curb again a few laps later and almost caused an enormous wreck as a result. And he did it again here. Like, he had the best tyres of any contender in the field, and he had 7 laps to pick his spot. I don't know why you go for what, for me, was a borderline do-or-die pass attempt of 7 to go. In a hole that I think was always going to close, personally. If Pato wants to win the Astor Cup, which I'm sure he does, especially given it was directly tied to his F1 aspirations, because that's the Pied Piper lie that Zach Brown whispered to him a couple of years ago. He's getting the hang of this from a consistency standpoint, but he'd probably have a very healthy points lead right now, and maybe an Indy 500 winner's ring to his name right now, if it wasn't for the Long Beach incident in this. Like, besides that, his season's been incredible.
He has 3 runner-up finishes. His second best finish after that is 4th. So if you take out Long Beach, you take out this Indianapolis 500, the other 4 races, he's never finished worse than 4th. And somehow, despite all of that, he is 3rd in the championship. Can you imagine? I imagine he is so grateful that this is not a double points race anymore.
Yeah. And like we talk about needing consistency to win championships. Like, just looking back at like Scott Dixon's record, where since 2020, Scott Dixon only has 2 DNFs, and we saw, like, the 2 DNFs at Long Beach and Gateway in 2021.
Neither were his fault. They were unforced errors. Should I say, was that really forced error? I guess it's a really way of saying it. I got a bit Tennessee there for a second, but you get the gist. Dixon always finishes. Always. Like, and here, Dixon had a horrible 500. Had vibrations that were shaking the onboard camera like a motherfucker during that.
It was shaking his rear wing. It was shaking his rear wing. You could see it visibly on the slow-mo cameras. I'm thinking, how has he not wrecked this car yet?
And RJ, where did he finish?
Give me a second.
I want to say
place.
There it is. Scott Dixon, everybody.
Death taxes Dixon.
Pato needs to take a page out of that book, in my opinion. Go on, King.
But I'd say that, like, Pato is pretty emblematic for McLaren, Aero McLaren as an entire organization, where, like, yes, they have had an uptick in form since, the acquisition, and driver lineup and everything's shown for it. But they still have actually yet to match Schmidt-Peterson's best season back in 2013 when Pagenaud finished 3rd in the championship.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're looking real good for that, at least. I mean, it's
like, I don't understand. Like, I understand the hype and why everyone thinks they're gonna join that, big 3 team, but they don't have any of the accomplishments to actually put them there. They have not climbed either two of IndyCar's twin peaks.
Yeah, they are still, technically speaking, a team in the making, and, like, I still have question marks about, is this driver lineup good enough? Like, okay, there is heavy rumors doing the rounds. It came from Jenna Fryer before this 500 race that they are apparently considering a big old check to bring in Marcus Ericsson next year.
Who himself can bring old checks.
If they get Marcus Ericsson in a 4-car team, good God. That's a Death Star. That's a Death lineup. That's the monsters out of Space Jam. I mean, come on. But they need to win something first.
Yeah, it's like they'll forever be that looming threat in the background that just never shows up when it matters.
Yeah, like,
because they spent the first half of that race literally just sitting there, 1, 2, 3, either from first back or second back or third back, and they were just there the entire race. But once we reached midway, it just all fell apart.
Yeah, just didn't happen. And God, they ended up, their best car was Alex Rossi in fifth.
Alex Rossi in fifth place. Again, that's a solid result, but
not what
Rossi's
he's here for.
this, but Rossi was brought in to win the race.
Yeah.
And that's a bad consolation prize. I do feel bad for Tony Kanaan because he could never get the balance right in his car the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, you can get into the other cool little short stories, the 22 short stories about the 500s in Simpsons-esque fashion now, because this was Tony Kanaan's 389th and final start in North American open wheeled racing. If you add his IndyCar and Champ Car appearances together, 389. That's it's a remarkable career, and it wouldn't be TK if he didn't leave us with one last ridiculous highlight to close the book on a legendary career. King, what the hell was that pass on Scott McLaughlin?
All these new kids being defensive all the way up to the runoff in the grass. TK was like, fine, I'll just run on the grass then.
Tony Kanaan put four wheels on the grass at 220 miles an hour and did not lift and completed the pass on Scott What the hell have I just said as a sentence? He's mental, that man. He's 49 on New Year's Eve. What is he doing? Tony, play golf, please, for your own sake.
He's gonna retire and do triathlons.
I like the first thing that he said in the post-race press conference. Props to Doug Bowles. The grass was spot on. Whoever cuts that is pretty good. But there was one really awesome moment, and that did get overshadowed because it wasn't Tony Kanaan finished 16th, but he finished right behind and raced alongside his friend Helio Castroneves. They have been friends pretty much for life. Their journey started together in 1998. Tony Kanaan as the reigning Indy Lights champion, moving up to kart. Helio Castroneves, then Helio Castro Neves as the runner-up of the series. And they've been racing together pretty much ever since. That was really special that they got to share that. They laughed, they cried together. And this also gave Tony Kanaan the thing that I think he needed all this time to walk out and call it a career. Because when he originally said he was going to retire in 2020, he didn't account for the world to stop. And he didn't count for the Indy 500 that year to be held behind closed doors like most races. And he wasn't going to go out racing in front of nobody. And he said that he would never get another reception like that if he were to come back. And he didn't want to spoil it. So I know we were joking about it, but I really think this is a man who's like, I'm at peace. I'm good.
I hope so. I hope he's at peace, because I mean, I can't imagine that you're 18 months away from turning 50, and you're considering doing this bonkers fucking oval race one more time. But I mean, he's already had 22 of them. I mean, it's already. I mean, not much more needs to be added from me. Tony Kanaan has had a legendary career. He was nicknamed the Iron Man for his incredible consistency and durability, which is the greatest ability you can have as an athlete, in my opinion. And, over a dozen wins, a 500 win of his own, he dedicated to the passing of his dad, which was a beautiful moment in its own right. And if you haven't seen his final interview with NBC, I do highly recommend you go out of your way to try and find it, because it was beautifully said from TK, who said that he hopes he's made a difference, and he hopes he's inspired a few kids to maybe give motorsport a chance. And he just said, I think the ones that hit me, the heads that hit me hardest was he hopes he made a difference, and I'd like to think that he has. So. Tony, we salute you, buddy. A hell of a run, sir, and a remarkable career, and a beautiful way to close it out. And I got to see the clip of him this morning of him and Helio side by side together for probably the last time on a racetrack. And yeah, it wouldn't be Tony without one last 500 loss to Helio finishing just in front of him.
Man, that's wild.
Hey, he finished ahead of Marco though, so that's a dub.
That is a dub. That is definitely. Sorry, Zoe. That is definitely a dub.
Not a good day for the second generation drivers who had been who've pretty much spent half their lives trying to win this race.
Oh, it's the time to talk about Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan.
I want to just scope in on Graham because he took the start 2 laps late because the car went fire. His battery failed on the way to the formation lap. After being asked to fill in as a favor to Stefan Wilson because of Graham Rahaal's ties to the Wilson family, because him and Justin were oh so close.
Shout out to editor Dre Harrison that had to digitally insert himself from the future into that last week's podcast to say, "Oh, by the way, that whole dramatic thing about Graham Rahal being bumped, yeah, he's kind of back in." That's how it shakes out sometimes. Was again. Luckily, he did actually make it back to the track on the day after surgery on his vertebra. So we wish Stefan well. That was a nasty crash that he had with Catherine Legg in practice. And speaking of Catherine Legg, she literally drove into the wall in pit lane.
That was...
It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
Driving in the Indianapolis, dude, there were like a lot of drivers that had trouble putting the power down coming out of the pits. I think Rossi almost spun it. And of course, Ratus VK did a quarter spin right into the side of Alex Palou. And you know what's crazy? Alex Palou stayed on the lead lap after repairs and picked his way through the field and finished in 4th.
Alex Palou is a fucking sorcerer. He's Yu-Gi-Oh's dark magician, but he's upgraded. He's now like the black magician of chaos. I do not understand how he keeps doing this.
I don't. Like, it was, despite not getting the win, banner day for Chip Ganassi Racing. 2nd, 4th, 6th, and 7th.
Shit. That is incredible. The whole team was in the top 7, but didn't win. That makes it even crazier. I love that Plan C almost came to fruition again for Chip Ganassi. It's amazing how these things turn out. But I mean, yeah. Alex Palou is a monster. I say this almost on every podcast that we have at this point, but that man is him. He is nuts. He is. I need to make this point one more time. He has not finished a race lower than 8th this season.
Like, deep down, I think he's going to be McLaren's guy going forward in IndyCar. He's going to be the guy, like Dixon 2.0.
Like, which is amazing, King, because it's like, you say Dixon 2.0. We've said a couple times, I've said personally, he reminds me of Frank Eaty in that 10 seat. He's just so good at everything, and like he's got. I mean, you say he's going to go to McLaren and be the number 1. Look, I probably agree with you there. They could have the 2 best drivers in this series next year.
Cool.
That is a terror. Like, having Pato in the 5 and Palou in the 6 is terrifying to me. It is absolutely disgusting having that front 2 as a combination.
All I'm gonna say is they better not waste it. Don't be that looming threat that never shows up.
King, could you imagine a situation where they bring in 4 cars, they get Marcus Ericsson in a dream scenario, and Alex Rossi is your floor as your 4th option?
That's your 4th option.
A man who's won a 500 and has been a title contender multiple times. Alex Rossi would be your 4th option.
They better leave here with something. They better leave
a man who has literally influenced close friendships and bonds in my life that have brought me here. Alexander Rossi is your 3rd best guy potentially. Hell, on some days even your 4th.
Oh, yeah, man. It is a lot. It is a lot, and that is like Alex Palou again. Just just incredible what that man's doing right now. It is nuts. He was this close to sweeping the month of May. Like, completely sweeping the whole thing open. That's a Dixon coming back, Palou coming back. Hell, even Rinus VK got into the top 10 in the end after a horribly driven race. Got back. I'm kind of glad that VK finally got a decent 500 under his belt.
And he tried hard not to.
I don't think he could have done much more besides put it in the wall again.
Yeah, top 10 after a drive-through penalty. Very impressive.
Yeah.
Colton Herta did that too. Colton Herta finished 9th after a drive-through penalty.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, that was a lot of ill stories. Also, I love that Cam was a bit too ill, and to be fair, he's also celebrating his birthday. So happy birthday, Cam. To directly be here, but he did edit our script to a degree, and I love that he says in here, quote, Alex Palou is still him, and he's a lot more diplomatic than I would have been in that post-race interview. I'm showing up to Rinus VK's house with a pair of pliers and a blowtorch. Which, quote, I'm going to get medieval on his ass. RNL, I knew you was arse, but my goodness, you redefined what it means to stink this May. And Kyle Kirkwood is really good at this whole driving thing. Yeah, shout out to Kyle Kirkwood. He was driving a fantastic race until that crash.
Yeah, overshadowed up until that crash. Kyle Kirkwood was just creeping in there, and all of a sudden, the second half of the race, Andretti is back in the picture.
Yeah, and I like Kirkwood's crash, the unsafe release from Colton Herta, which indirectly ended Romain Grosjean's day. Like, it felt like Andretti had the pace, things just didn't fall their way.
Between Kyle Kirkwood and Josef Newgarden being the standard bearer and Colton Herta, you think, wow, these are the generation, these are race winners, proven commodities, drivers that can really carry the standard for young American drivers in IndyCar. But if you listen to some people on the host broadcaster, you would think that there's only one American driver under the age of 30 who really has the stuff to be a competitor. And just now, he only recorded his first top 3 finish in an IndyCar race.
Huh. How about that? Look, I said it before. The man is a superb talent. Like, in terms of ovals, he's done it in 2 different series. He clearly has a knack for this. I'm not going to deny that, right? But Townsend Bell needs to stop. Honestly, I didn't even realize until King mentioned that he's directly his agent. I didn't know that was even the case. Like, that seals the deal for me, that this is like, and Jason put it in our chat as well, because it's the exact same deal with how BT Sport has Michael Laverty commentate on Moto3 races, despite the fact he's a team owner in the series itself. Like, he owns the Vision Track team that has Scott Ogden and Josh Watley in it. Like, I just I just find it amazing that Townsend Bell is arguing indisputable facts to defend the fact that his driver, his literal personal interest in Santino Ferrucci, is impacting the quality of the broadcast. And like I said, I don't envy James Hinch, because Hinch was about to explode next to him. Hinch was pissed. You could tell just by listening. I know that's a drive-through penalty. No, it's not. And I'm like, but it is. It just is.
It didn't turn out to be a drive-through penalty. It turned out to be a monetary fine that didn't even make the notes in the penalty summary of the IndyCar official race results.
Yeah,
we have all the restarts at the back of the field. Harvey for entering into his wrong pit box, Canapino for a pit speed violation, McLaughlin for emergency service, and then all the drive-throughs, VK, Peterson for pit speed, Colton Herta for the unsafe release. But
yeah, the only reason we know it was a fine is that they were told so on the broadcast, the commentary team.
That may be something to think about in the future. Like, I've already cut my promo on Santino Ferrucci earlier in the show, because there's a lot of stuff that's circulating that did happen, and there's a lot of circulating stuff that didn't happen. But the fact of the matter of this, He earned himself a 2-weekend suspension for driving into a teammate that him and his father were on the record as making like horrific racist bullying in the paddock. And Ferrucci has been pretty much saying that he's not repentant about it. He's not repentant about the way that he drives or, having a cell phone in his car, driving into his teammate on a cool down lap. And I'll say this much. I don't feel great that Kyle Larson's Freedom from Consequences tour is going to culminate with him getting a shot at the 500, but at least Larson has shown more contrition for the awful shit that he did than Ferrucci has.
Yeah.
I don't want to discount how awesome it is that AJ Foyt Enterprises had a legitimate chance to win. I don't want to discount what a lot of that team has gone through to get a good result like this. And Michael Cannon as well, as an engineer, has proven that he's one of the best. But, oh, God, the dick eating is crazy.
That's the problem. Yes, we if it were any other driver that we were doing this about, we would still be complaining. We pretty much have the same feelings when Hinch does with Alexander Rossi, and we don't really have any off the track problems with Alex Rossi.
No, not really. No, not really at all. It's just, it's a conflict of interest in an annoying way, and part of the reason why we're harsh is because outside of that, Hinch is a fantastic commentator and broadcaster. Yeah. He really is. And I'm not just saying that because he's one of my favorite drivers. I'm saying it because he's genuinely really good at this. Otherwise, this is a guy who wanted to be a journalist if he didn't be a racing driver himself. He said it on the record. So, it is so I find it remarkable that in a race where Josef Newgarden, who, let's not forget, is American himself, just cemented his legacy as one of IndyCar's greatest modern-day drivers and was, I still say it, years delayed from getting the superstar push that he should have gotten. Instead, we look at Santino Ferrucci and go, he's the guy, even though the series has had a fleet of brilliant American drivers at the front of the field for a good half-decade plus in recent times. And new names like Newgarden. Remember when Graham Rahal was a title contender?
Yeah.
That wasn't that long ago.
It's not the late 90s anymore. It's not the early 2000s. We do not have a drought of American talent.
No. It's always, it's been here. It's been here for a while now. And I just don't understand why. I just don't get why Ferrucci is this big ticket guy that you claim is. Kyle Kirkwood is right there.
Even Malukas is right there. I know he didn't he had kind of an anonymous race, but he's there too.
Yeah. It's unlike Santino, Kirkwood's won a race this year.
Kirkwood has won a race this year, and David Malukas has been far more well-rounded as an IndyCar driver in his career to date than Santino Ferrucci ever has. In any racing series that Santino Ferrucci has ever raced in. Because he was a mediocre Formula 2 driver at Trident before he even got to America in the first place. He wasn't winning races in Europe. He was barely in the points.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And look, we can litigate whether or not, a Trident, we're getting the shit end of the stick in terms of control equipment. We understand that, but it's just not the kind of guy that you want to stump that hard for. And, I don't want to end the show having another rant about a guy that comes from a state in which I live in now. Because there's a whole other IndyCar season to go. You don't need us to tell you that there's still good stuff to be had. We're probably not the ones that need to be shouldering the load to tell people out there, hey, there's more races after this, and they're all going to be good.
I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably know there are more races after this.
Yeah,
11 more of them.
We've got 11 more to go, and we've got a brand new race in Detroit this weekend.
We can have shit in Detroit. It's amazing.
Hopefully it's fun. That would be nice. So yeah, overall a pretty good 500. I just wish it was sorted out via slightly cleaner ways.
It
That's
was
all.
a good race, but we tried to engineer a dusty finish. And
We don't like-
I
we
don't
don't
agree
like
with that. I don't agree with the booking, but I'm glad about the winner, and that means 5 stars. Match of the year candidate.
And one more thing. We actually had a good Monaco Grand Prix too. We really were playing with house money this weekend. We'll see that episode a little bit later on this week. We're all a little bit busy with our full-time jobs, but around weekend sort of time, we'll also have an episode with me and Cam talking about the Monaco Grand Prix. And just when you thought Red Bull might lose one off their own backs this year, nope, not in the slightest. The table is on, baby, and Red Bull are trying to run it. But we actually had a good Monaco Grand Prix. I'm not even joking. This actually happened. It was wild. But that was the 107th running of the Indy 500. More to come from Day of Classics, where we talk about the Monaco Grand Prix later on this week. You know where to find us on social media. Check out the website, motorsport101.com, to check us out. All our social media is on there as well. Some extra thoughts from me on the 500 in the blog section, if you're that way inclined. Like I said, I've been Dre Harrison. They've been RJ O'Connell. Thanks to Ryan King for coming on and filling in for us as well. Much appreciated as ever. Check him out on Jalopnik. Until next time, sayonara.
Thank you to the whole crew at Motorsport Japan for putting on a fantastic live stream of the Fuji SuperTech 24 hours. Thank you to race fans for giving me an opportunity to cover the Indy 500 on their behalf. And thank you to Daily Sports Car and Racer Magazine for giving me the opportunity to be on site for the centenary 24 hours of Le Mans, which is why I will not be here Thursday.
Cool shit. Very cool shit.
Later, y'all.
Bye.